Greetings builders, and welcome to the part 2 of the most played builds during this new PoE event. If you missed the part 1, don't worry, you can find its link together with the POBs and complete guides for all those builds in the video description. And if this video helps you, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much, and let's get into it! Let's start with this explosive build that achieves huge amounts of single target damage with low investment, the Hexblast Mines Saboteur with the Shadow class. Hexblast is a very interesting skill that deals a lot of extra damage if the enemy it hits is already cursed. Besides that, it also creates a big pulse of damage that destroys all nearby monsters. That's why it's important that our enemies are always cursed. To list the pros of this build, I would start with how powerful it gets with low investment. With cheap and easy to find items, we're going to make bosses disappear with your mind chain reactions. Part of that is because Hexblast can naturally shock, freeze and ignite enemies. And if that wasn't good enough, it also considers the lowest resistance the enemy has before calculating the damage. This build is also very fast and deals a lot of area damage. It's super satisfying to clear maps this way. Above all, you can throw your mines from a long distance and stay far from danger. Now to list the cons, I will start saying that mine gameplay isn't for everyone. Some players just can't get used to the detonation mechanic, but trust me, it's worth giving a try because mine builds have huge potential. Another issue is that this character is not very tanky. Because of that, you need to always mind your position or you might die. As for budget, this build is cheap. You can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 70 chaos. To comfortable advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Profane Proxy Ring that causes one of your Skither bots to have a curse aura. This way, the enemies you hit with your Hexblast are always going to trigger the big area damage, increasing a lot your clear speed. For clear speed, I'll give this build 9 out of 10. You are very fast and your mines explode in a big area, killing many monsters at once. It's very comfortable to clear maps with this character. The boss damage is also amazing and deserves 9 out of 10. You can stack many mines and delete bosses with a huge detonation. This build has an incredible single target potential, even on a low budget. For the survivability, I'll give it 8 out of 10. Even though you have armor, evasion, spell suppression and can throw your mines from a big distance, this build is still not very tanky and needs to stay still from time to time to deploy the mines. That's why I took 2 points out. Next we have the super fun and spin to win Cyclone of Tumult Slayer with the Duelist class. Now with the new melee buffs, many of you were asking for the update of this build, and here you go, it was an absolute delight to play this one. Now it feels really powerful all the time, almost as we used to feel on bosses with the Ancestral Totems, and now we even have the reworked banners for the extra DPS during boss fights. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. It's just amazing to be always moving and massacring all the poor enemies on the way. The boss damage is also incredible. Once the build is done, you are going to kill even the big bosses in just a matter of seconds. And above all of that, this build is very simple and easy to put together. Now to list the cons, I would point a few important issues and I'd like to ask you to pay close attention here. You see, this build has a great survivability once it's done. But when you're leveling your character, you need to pace your progression, because you're always very close to enemies. If you're not prepared, you are going to die. So take the extra time to pick up a few more levels before progressing to a high tier content. Another useful tip about your survivability is how to deal with stuns. On this build, you get stun immunity with cluster duels, but not everyone can afford them right away. If that's your case, or if you're just having problems with stuns sooner, do this simple trick of picking those evasion nodes and this mastery. Believe me, it helps a lot. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortable advanced 3 yellow maps, I recommend investing around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 6 divines. You only need one mandatory unique item for this build, the Stampede boots that guarantee that your movement speed will always be 150% of its pace. This means that the downside of Cyclone of Tumult will mean absolutely nothing to us. For clear speed, I'll give it 9 out of 10. Cyclone never stops moving and have a huge area of effect, so you can farm your maps without the need to stop for casting or anything like that. It's just awesome and very satisfying. The boss damage is just amazing and deserves 10 out of 10. When this build is done, you're going to easily achieve over 15 million DPS that is more than enough to destroy bosses in just seconds. For this survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build achieves almost 80,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even some instant life leech. Now, with the huge arrow effect from Cyclone of Tumult, you don't even need to stay very close to enemies on endgame, what gives you even more survivability. Finally, we have the super fast and strong Flicker Strike Slayer with the Duelist class. This build uses Terminus S to sustain the frenzy charges needed for you to keep flickering. It's a great and simple Flicker Strike build for beginners. To list the pros of this build, I would have to start with its clear speed. Look at that, this is just insanely fast. It also counts with an awesome boss damage and instant life leech. And of course, Flicker builds are just super cool. Now, to list the cons, I would start with the fact that you're always very close to enemies, which puts you in a vulnerable position. Another issue is that you have little control over your character, making it hard on bosses where you need to mind your position or attack the right enemy. As for budget, you can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps, you need to invest around 120 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. You need only one mandatory unique item for this build, the Terminus S sword that keeps your frenzy charges up even while flickering. For clear speed, this build is surely a 10 out of 10, and I don't even need to say anything, just take a look at the gameplay and you have to agree with me. The boss damage is great and deserves 9 out of 10. This build can easily deal many millions of damage per second, it's just great to kill big bosses like that. Now for the survivability, I'll only give it 8 out of 10. Even though this build still has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion and spell suppression, I had to take 2 points out for the same reason as I did with the Cyclone Slayer. Since you're always very close to enemies, you're always in a vulnerable position. And that's it for today, guys. Are you playing any of those meta builds? Please don't forget to tell me in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day, and don't forget to keep building!